You're a specialist.
I hate spiders. Can I just say that? I hate them. They do not respect even a snake.
Hey, snake, what's that like? Being a serpent deceiving in the garden. Say hi to
It's
your
true.
mother
Like,
for me.
I can understand why a snake would be a more cursed, wretched animal because, like, it was embodied by Satan. But I think that's just allegorical and they didn't know how to describe spiders when they said serpent.
Hello, everyone.
Wait.
What are you doing? Oh, the clap. You gotta get the clap.
Got it.
Welcome to Tales from the Ditch, starring Sean Allen Moss, sometimes starring Seth Wildshoot. And back again, we have
The white
Tony.
vans.
Tony with the white vans. Working on his PhD, our science guy. It doesn't rhyme with
Science
Bill-
Tony.
Science Tony. Better than, was it Science Mike? What's that? I feel bad because they're probably nice guys, but there's that
Science Mike, yeah.
yeah. Uncle Tony, as he's known to my son and his criminal affiliates. Tony, how you doing?
Good.
Are you sick right now and dying?
Not dying, but sick for sure.
Definitely
Yeah,
sick.
I feel terrible. The first time you came on, you were saying all these, like, at least 7-syllable words, and we were talking about super important scientific stuff, and the audio failed.
Yes.
So it was, like, recorded on this secondary device that didn't work very well, and it sounded terrible, and it was so hard to understand because all these, like, important words, and you could barely hear it. It was like you were on the other side of a room, like our band recordings. Is what
Yeah. Which got great reviews.
yeah, it did. We got one review that said, this sounds like it was recorded on the other side of the room or something.
Yeah, in a bathroom.
And now you're back, and we appreciate you coming back after all of the scalding emails you received after appearing on our show. But now you're sick.
Yep.
So that sucks. But what can you do?
Why does God not want Tony on our podcast? That's what I want to know. Tony, is it Uranus or Uranus? I want to sell this.
I don't even know.
Really?
I'm not a
Yeah,
Etymologist?
stay in your lane.
astro guy.
Etymologist, good point, actually. Interesting.
I am not an etymologist either.
Because this
What
was
if you were that
entomologist.
guy? What if you were that Greek god, Uranus?
Uranus, real pain in the ass. That was Sean and I. Well, my first experience with science was the teacher saying, "Now we're gonna say this planet, and we don't need to laugh about it, and it's not a big deal." And then she said it, and it was all uphill from then.
That's when it all
Because
started.
everyone kept saying Uranus, and by everyone I mean Sean and I could not stop laughing, and she threatened me with detention, and I just couldn't stop laughing. I said, "How far is Uranus?" I go, "What does it look like at its center?"
Compared to Earth, how big is Uranus?
How big is Uranus?
Why is Uranus tilted on its axis?
Is it gaseous? Yeah. So, but we didn't come here to talk like brace girdles from Hard Bottle. West of Brie.
First science question. You're sick.
Yep.
We got some whiskey here. Now, I have noticed, I'm going to just retell a story real quick. I know I already started it, but now we're recording. So I went to Disneyland. This jet of water shot in my eye, behind my eye, but I got sick instantly. Like this terrible bacterial infection.
Right.
It was like, it put me on my ass. I couldn't go to Disneyland. We were there for like 3 days and I just stayed in the hotel room. It was terrible.
Right.
And I was like, man, I gotta be careful with like what water, like, gets in my eyes and stuff like that. I used to be pretty immune to that, I feel like, because I had a career of diving for golf balls and I was always in those ponds. And those
the
things had
ditch.
all the,
You opened
and
your
the ditch,
eyes
too.
in the ditch underwater.
yeah, the ditch was all full of like, runoff from golf courses too, and like dog crap. And one time there was a fish in it and giant
and
frogs.
some kid took a dump in there.
This
named
one
Seth.
kid, Seth, yeah. So anyways, I'm like, well, I'm getting old now and my immune system can't respond that well. But the other day I have this pond in my backyard that's probably worse than any Disneyland pond as far as like bacteria and E. coli, and there's fish in there and there's been frogs and turtles in there. So it's probably really nasty. And same thing happened. This jet of water went like right on my tongue. it just like splashed out and just went straight for my face, and I felt it on my tongue, and instantly I was like spitting and stuff like that. And the best thing I could think of to do is, it's in the backyard right by the shed where we record, where we always have whiskey for recording, is I went and I just chugged a bunch of whiskey really quick, and I didn't get sick. So to me, that's empirical, double-blind evidence that whenever you start feeling sick, a hot toddy is a great.
What do you
way to
say,
get over
Tony?
that cold.
Well, yeah, we use ethanol all the time in the lab to like spray down equipment, lab benches. I think you got to let it sit there for a little while. So you probably be better to gargle and not immediately consume. That'd probably be a better strategy.
But if your blood is always 30%
Then
whiskey,
you're good.
So that's all he's doing is sanitizing his body. He's not a raging alcoholic. He's just
seen it. I
sanitizing his
see.
I'm just trying to be clean. All right, what's an eyeball?
Immunoprivileged.
Immunoprivileged.
Yeah, so your immune system doesn't want to aggressively like fight. How do I put this? Yeah, like your brain, your eyes, things that are super important. You don't have a lot of autoimmunity in those organs because they're immunoprivileged, but
So they're kind of a weak spot.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
like
okay.
they're entries.
So that proves my point.
Kind of portals into the body, and so yeah.
So if I'm hearing you right, the Earth is 2 million years old. That's what I'm hearing. Speaking.
All right.
So,
Good segue. Excellent work.
well, no,
Here we
okay.
go.
So from I feel like you can always talk about this theologically.
Yeah.
But from what you've seen, and obviously I think you've conveyed this to me, in the science community, there are popular theories and unpopular ones. There are obviously ones, it seems to me, that are pushed more than others.
Right.
But from just what you know, and your, would you call your PhD, is it biochem or biochemistry, or what would it be?
Yeah, biochemistry and molecular biology is the department.
Okay, so can anything in that speak into when Christians think about, they go, well, is the earth young? Is it old? Or maybe you think it's not old, but it's still possible. I mean, is there anything in your studies that speaks into that? Maybe of dealing with rocks or the breakdown of things? I mean, I wasn't sure how much in what you've learned your branch of science can speak into, or just what you've read maybe from other guys of,
Right.
What do you think? Is the earth young, old? What do you think?
So I would say, yeah, my specialty's more in the biological sciences. So I'm not going to try to speak to geology. I've looked at peer-reviewed articles just for fun and like trying to, when I do present stuff like that, trying to yield to the experts and not try to act like I'm an expert in every field.
Good for you.
Yeah, because I mean, just because you have a PhD or you're working on a PhD, I do not have my PhD. I've got about a year and a half left. But yeah, you are an expert in your field, so to try to claim to be an expert in another field that you don't have a graduate degree in would be kind of, arrogant in my opinion. But yeah, I can definitely see from a biological angle certain things that I can understand and totally speak to. I think one of the big things up and coming and is, I don't know, there's a lot of papers in the paleontology community, I don't know how you'd say that, but there's been soft tissue found in dinosaurs. Mary Schweitzer discovered soft tissue in a T-Rex femur. They also discovered hemoglobin. So of that soft tissue, there was hemoglobin and collagen, and they sequenced it, and it did not match up with any modern animals. In fact, I think the hemoglobin
Oh, I'm quoting you on it in my sermon.
But I believe the hemoglobin was actually closer to mammalian hemoglobin than it was even to birds or reptiles.
Whoa.
When they did they did a Western blot on it. You don't have to know what that is, but it lit up, and the affinity of the antibody that they used, I think it was closer to a rabbit or mammal, which is kind of interesting. But that's not the cool part. The cool part is that they found soft tissue. And you see the paleontological community just like scrambling and freaking out to find an answer for this, because if you understand like soft tissue, collagen doesn't stick around for 65 million years, let alone a million years. It's like,
oh, really?
You're like, okay, so this just throws you, and it's not, they're like, oh, okay, it's a fluke. One specimen. No, they found hadrosaurs. They found a triceratops that had unfossilized bone, the osteocytes, the bone cells, where you could still...
In the horns?
Yes, you could still see the white in the filaments of this. And so they're finding soft tissue all the time, which is like... The only reasonable explanation is dinosaurs did not die out 65 million years ago. And they've tried to say, oh, it was bacterial contamination, or these little red blood cell looking things are ferrocytes. Last time I checked, clusters of iron don't have hemoglobin in them. So,
That's what I was just going to say.
It's like, nice try, but yeah, no. And so that kind of gives credence to, yeah, your timeline is off. Or even like,
I'm sorry. I just want to catch up on the soft tissue. When we don't have to find a mosquito in amber to be able to go sequence this.
Chris Pratt in amber?
We've already sequenced a dinosaur?
No, I didn't say that.
Oh,
it was
sorry.
just protein. I don't know if they've looked for DNA. I'm sure there's probably good
Okay,
DNA.
so it's different than Jurassic Parking.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen anybody try to sequence.
Of course you
the
have.
DNA. I just
the
saw
government's covered up.
I just saw the protein sequences, so trying to verify, is this actually contamination or is this T-Rex? And it looks pretty conclusive that it's T-Rex. It's not like you can go and compare it. You can't go down to like Professor Bill's office and be like, hey man, could you give me some T-Rex protein to compare this sequence to?
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
you gotta find another
they
sample and then sequence it if you find.
But you said they did several dinosaurs, and they all showed some type of similarity?
No. The dinosaurs had soft tissue, and they could show that it was collagen, or that it was non-fossilized bone, or their blood vessels that have a lot of collagen in them. They could see it. It was pliable once they got it into solution. Mary Schweitzer was shocked. I think she repeated the experiment 14 different times. And she's done this with multiple fossils. It's not just the T-Rex. The T-Rex was kind of like, I think kind of her big breakthrough on this. But, I mean, she was fought tooth and nail by her own editors and stuff to not publish it, or to come up with a reasonable explanation that you could preserve something for 65 million years.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, I don't think so. Like, just the natural breakdown, the half-life of collagen. There's no, even if you had it in a vacuum and like in an oxygenless environment, maybe, or well, not oxygenless, but limiting oxygen, it's still gonna like decay over time, and it's sure as the heck isn't gonna last a million years.
Jeez.
That's ridiculous.
What do you think killed the dinosaur? Was it Goliath? Was it him? Sorry, that's what they taught me in Bible school. It was Goliath, and that Satan planted him there. So
Yeah.
I think to kind of keep it broad and not speak outside of my sphere of influence, I'd say environmental conditions just changed to where they couldn't survive anymore. Like I don't know, man. The oxygen content, I don't know. I don't think it was a meteor. I don't think a meteor wiped out. But I mean, dare I say, conditions from a cataclysmic event reshaped the Earth? I mean, even the
like a flood?
The paleontology community would say that. Oh, I've got an interesting thing to show you. There's a database of all the recorded fossils scattered across the entire globe, and they have where all the dig sites are and where all the fossils are. Guess what predominantly are the majority of fossils found on land on all the continents?
Okay.
What?
Aquatic species.
Really?
Yeah. So the absolute majority of all fossil specimens found are aquatic species, and they're found on land. Obviously, you don't go look for fossils in the bottom of the ocean, right?
Of course not.
Isn't that weird?
That's crazy.
That's very weird.
I know that it's actually normal here because we say that one day where we live geographically, it was all covered with water because Lake Lahontan was
a basin, like the Great Basin.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. But not worldwide. That's surprising.
Oh, yeah. I could show you the database.
Was there dinosaurs during the Garden of Eden, you think?
I think so, yeah.
And then the Nephilim got them in rear naked chokes and killed them all.
Yeah.
I just find that interesting because here's the thing. And this is something I appreciate about Tony. I don't think we need to see science and faith as enemies.
Nope.
And if anything, it just intrigues me. I've never had a conversation with Tony or even other friends of mine who are into science where I went, man, that makes me question God. It just made me more curious. As long as, we were charitable. Cause I just wonder about that. I'm like, do I have evidence that Jacob got a T-Rex and an ankle lock? No. Will I preach it? Absolutely. So,
and even
who are you to disprove me?
On the inverse of that, is it blasphemy to say the Earth could have been at least 65 million years old?
Just now, are we talking the whole package was evolution, or just saying no, the Earth is older than we think?
Just saying the Earth is at least 65 million years old.
Even if, and this is just from a pastor point of view, if someone came up to me and I want to paint the picture for you. They're affirming the creeds. They believe in Jesus, all this. And then they say, I just happen to think the earth is older than it is. Even if I disagreed with him, it's not going against any of the early councils or creeds. We're so quick to call stuff heretical or blasphemous. It's not going against the deity of God. I'd ask him questions of, hey, do you still say God's in control? Do you still say, I'd want him theologically to be able to argue from Genesis that he can at least, because I want everyone, as a shepherd, like I want everyone who I disciple to be able to argue their points or be able to defend their faith. But no, I wouldn't call him blasphemous. There are guys I respect, Tony knows who he is, Polkinghorne. He has different views on the earth, but he loves Jesus.
Right.
And there's never been anything he said where I go, that guy does not believe in God. And actually Dawkins and guys like that were offended when they found out Polkinghorne did believe in God. They're like, he doesn't affirm that. Yeah, he believes in the virgin birth. He believes in the Trinity. But he just has different views. And like, Tony, so he's coming from a different angle though. Polkinghorne is a physicist. I say.
Yeah.
And even the guys who disagree with him, I don't think I've heard any of them call him a heretic. I don't even think, what's that one guy? Oh shoot, you've brought him up. Not Malcolm, is that his name? He's a PhD, but he's on the other side. And he likes to debate guys, Christian. Oh shoot, you've brought him up to me, Tony. Anyway, he's a solid dude. I'll look him.
Kent Hovind?
Not
No.
him.
I don't think Kent has his PhD. Though.
Not Malcolm. Not, what is it?
Lennox?
It might have been Lennox.
John Lennox, the mathematician at Oxford?
Yeah, Lennox never badmouthed Polkinghorne and called him a heretic.
I think he's a fellow.
Yeah, he's friends with him.
Yeah, they're fellows at Oxford together.
So if he doesn't have an issue, and Lennox, if you guys want to look at him, he's not a dumb dude. You know him. He's like, some of the theories I brought up, he's studied them and defended them against, I'm like, dang, I wouldn't call it blasphemous. I don't know if you were asking Tony too, but from a theological standpoint, no, he's not bashing on the deity. That doesn't go against the Nicene Creed, the Apostles' Creed, 1689. It doesn't go against any confessions. It doesn't go against, Westminster. I don't know if I can think of a confession where you go, yeah, cause if you're saying blasphemy, that's a big, like if I say that to a guy, that's like grounds to disqualify or kick someone out of the church. So I'm very, I don't think so. I don't know if Tony has a different.
Yeah, I think that's ridiculous to fight people on their view of origins. I mean, I can understand the young Earth kind of side where they're saying, well, it's a slippery slope if you start like making exemptions and exceptions for parts of the Bible and you start to say, well, it's not really that literal. Genesis 1 is kind of like, if it was written by Moses, which most of them believe that it wasn't, they believe that the Torah was written by a series of individuals over the course of time. But I mean, if we're going to yield to Christ said the books of Moses and the books of the law and the prophets, he didn't really leave much room for that. And so I think I kind of yield to that. Whatever Jesus said keeps things in bound. And then anything outside of that, I think is fair game to muse upon and whatever. But it's just like, the reason that there is a debate is because nobody's sure. They act like they're sure, but they're not.
And that's
There's not
the thing.
enough evidence.
That's the thing, like the Scopes trials. Is that right? The monkey thing with and Jimmy Stewart?
Where the monkey had to break dance?
Okay.
That was it.
So cruel.
The trials where they were going to begin teaching evolution in the school.
Right.
And it was like this backwater town, and they were like, we're not teaching no monkey thing, and the protagonist is saying, hey, like, we should give this evolutionary theory a chance or something like that.
Right.
What was at stake was people saying exactly that they're sure, that they're certain that it is this young earth, and teaching this evolution is some type of blasphemy or something like that.
Right.
I think that is super dangerous, especially when there aren't that many absolutes as far as like history goes that you can necessarily like get behind 100% and call other people blasphemous. Usually points of blasphemy are over much different things than history and science and things like that.
Well, here's the only reason I'm sympathetic to it is, I don't know. R.C. Sproul said, he's like, I don't know how old the earth, he goes, and it really doesn't bother me that I don't. He goes, I'm not a scientist. Right. And he said that. And he brought up, he goes, I have brothers in Europe who go, no, based on my study. And he was bringing up friends of his who have like PhDs in, Hebrew literature, all this. He goes, some of them are looking going, no, you're reading this wrong. The book's meant to be read this way and this. And then he had friends in America he respects saying, no, they're reading it wrong. It's supposed to be this way. And he said both these guys love Jesus.
Right.
And none of them were doing it to please the crowd. They genuinely went, no, I've studied it. I think this is how this literature should be read. Like, same thing when you go, okay, how do you read apocalyptic literature versus wisdom of, oh, well, they say, this is how you pronounce it. Well, was it Aramaic or was it Hebrew? And that's why, yeah, if you get into deity of Christ, that's serious. If you get into the path to salvation, if you get into, but some of this stuff, like, I even wonder this. What if they're both wrong? What if the guy says, hey, it's 6,000 years old. They say 65 million and we find out it's 50,000 years. Maybe God was just screwing with us. And literally, but I just don't, it's not as much of a close hand issue as it used to be with me because I'm much more concerned going, where are you at with Jesus? Like, do you believe in him? Do you think he's behind this all? And I get it. I'm glad we have guys at the gate who want to defend it, but I also know, I've said this over and over. You don't judge a philosophy by its abuse. And sometimes I've seen guys who go, well, this guy went sideways. And I go, I know. And we should be careful of that. But like, not every guy, like Rob Bell, perfect example. They said, well, he read N.T. Wright and look where he ended up. But there's lots of guys who read N.T. Wright and didn't end up there. And there was a lot of other factors. That's why, I don't know. I want to be careful, but I also want to be charitable where maybe they just were discipled differently than me and really did study and are going, no, I think this might be it. And I don't know. I see in church history, heresy and blasphemy is you have to be going against the councils to create something at the core of our faith. It's never on, they never say like, we kicked him out of the church because he wanted drums. It's usually like, no, he was questioning the deity of Christ or, I feel like there's a balance we can have with that. We can still say, well, how'd you come to that conclusion? Because obviously, I mean, Tony has some of the science end on. I'm looking at purely from theological of like, is this something worth kicking the guy out of the church for? You know what I mean?
Totally.
That's my wheelhouse as theologian. It's not, I am not a scientist whatsoever, but.
Well, even like my stance is a mix of both the evidence that I see and, scripture.
There you go. Yeah.
Like, again, like you said, you're putting a burden on a book that was never intended to hold that weight. Like Genesis is prose narrative, like storytelling, in the first 3 chapters. And there's like verse 27 of chapter 1 is poetry. You kind of see it like in this little paragraph, this little stanza, and they denote it as poetry, but most of it is prose narrative. And like you're trying to take a like very modern concept of the scientific method and put it over a ancient Eastern book written in Paleo Hebrew. It's like, that's ridiculous. You can't do that. Now, there are things that we can glean from Genesis.
Absolutely.
And I believe Genesis is truth. But, Moses, if you believe that he wrote Genesis, he was pretty far removed, and it's an ESPN highlight. He's not trying to go into massive detail. That's Western thinkers do that. He's not even a Western thinker. He's from the East. And so even trying to imply or, superimpose your Western thinking over an Eastern document is kind of a ridiculous notion. But I do glean stuff from Genesis.
Absolutely.
That makes me think, kind of the position that I hold is I'm a old earth, old universe, but young creation guy.
There you go.
Actually.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How old would you say creation is?
I think creation is 13.8 billion years old. Or sorry, creation?
Yeah.
I think creation is along the timeline of within 10,000 years, but I think the creation of Earth and the Genesis.
Okay, yeah.
But
okay.
So here's why I think
existence.
that.
How old is like all
existence of the universe? 13.8 billion years old.
Okay.
And the reason I think that is because the furthest thing we can see in the universe is a galaxy that's 13.8 billion light years away. And so I think
from
time is
Earth?
irrelevant. Yeah.
Or from the center of the
from
universe.
Earth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, from the Hubble telescope, it's like galaxy, like, I can't even remember. I'm not going to try to.
So Earth is kind of the center of creation, and everything, and the furthest thing from Earth is
hell.
Actually,
Milwaukee.
There's actually thought that might be the case, because if you look out at the night sky, and this isn't me saying this is me having listened to astrophysicists, physicists, cosmologists.
Stay in your lane.
Like no. I'm saying they said this.
Yeah,
I'm not
I
saying.
know.
So one of the major young Earth guys that they appeal to is Dr. Russell Humphreys.
Yeah.
And he proposes that he assumes that the universe we're closer to the center of the universe. He says approximately 1.6 million light years from the center of the universe. And the reason he thinks that is because if you point a telescope anywhere from Earth into outer space, the uniformity of the stars and the galaxies it's pretty much indistinguishable. Huh. The same concentration of galaxies and stars is relatively the same no matter where you point the telescope on any place on Earth looking out towards towards outer space. And so he says that uniformity means if you were like, let's say you're in a balloon, and if you're at the center of that balloon and you could see maybe colored air particles or whatever, and you looked uniform all the way around you, if you had a boundary like a balloon, you'd be closer to the center if everything looked uniform.
Yeah.
If you were all the way to the left, then everything would look super thick to the right and would be pretty sparse to your left.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And so that's why they think that. The late Stephen Hawking just said, well, there is no boundary. And so things just are kind of look uniform because there's a boundary. It's finite. It's a finite universe, but there's no boundary. And it's just like, okay, well, when somebody goes to the edge of the universe and tells me whether there's a boundary or not, then I can make a decision, which is going to be never, unless you learn how to bend space and get there somehow. But
you actually here's the funny thing. So I didn't have a date on it, but I actually 100% agree with, well, at least, I mean, and this is a open-handed.
So I guess some gap theory is what I would say.
Yeah.
Put in a word.
So I consider this an open-handed issue.
Yeah.
But on this issue, I tend to land where you do, partially because I had read some people who, one, they made the same point as you as the point of Genesis was not to answer every single scientific question you have.
Right.
But it's really showing God bringing order to chaos. Like there's a lot of, it seems in Genesis to talk a lot of pre-existing stuff that he brings to order and puts in its right place and places it and designs it and says, okay, I'll put you here and I'll separate this here and this and this. And so I have no problem with someone saying, well, when he made Adam, it was this many days. I go, totally. But I've heard some guys I respect theologically go, it seems like there's a lot of stuff that already been around a while. But God, it's a story of him coming in and bringing order to it and establishing it and placing it and saying, okay, this is the sun. This is how this will be. This will place. I'll separate the waters. Cause you notice it doesn't say, and suddenly the waters exist. He comes down. Holy Spirit is hovering over and goes, okay, boom, and starts ordering everything. And the reason I agree with that is that's sometimes also a theme you see in other parts of God bringing order to chaos. And then with Adam and Eve, he goes, okay, now you're going to be over these stewards and bring, you're going to watch the garden and cultivate this. And once again, they're bringing, it's not that it's all sinful and evil, but everything is just there. Now they're going to bring order and follow in, almost like discipleship, follow in his steps of, we'll bring order to the garden and we'll name the animals and we'll put this in its proper place. Cause God is a God of order. He brings things together. And yeah, I tend to land, I didn't have a number on cause I went, I don't know, it's just freaking old, but you said 13 what?
13.8 billion years old. Well, just because the furthest amount of light that has reached our Earth is 13.8 billion, so that's kind of the limit. And I guess you could take, so Dr. Russell Humphreys, he talks about like time dilation. So have you heard of like the twin astronaut?
Yeah.
Where one travels out close to the speed of light, comes back. He's much younger, but his twin on Earth is a lot older because he was traveling close to the speed of light.
Interstellar. Yeah, it was a good movie.
Yeah. Time dilation. Yeah. Exactly. Like where he goes down to the planet and hours have passed by, but years, 20 decades have passed by on the ship. That's totally time dilation.
Right.
Okay.
So he kind of yields to that, and there's parameters that he sets, and thus far, as much as I know, no one's actually argued. I've heard Dr. Humphreys criticized a ton, but I've never heard his mathematics are awful. His model does not make sense. So I think it's theoretical physics. People forget that. Like,
right.
It's not empirical, it's not entirely empirical. Yeah, you can see the light coming from heavenly bodies, and you can see the red shift, meaning that anything shifting into the red spectrum is further away. Anything shifting into the blue light spectrum is closer when you're looking at things in the universe. But it seems to me like I understand where he's coming from, but it seems almost like a little bit of a conflict of interest. Like he's been strong-armed by his tribe of young earthers to have to find a theory that'll fit their theology or what they perceive to be strict theology. Where it's like, it doesn't have to be that way. And if you look at Genesis 1, it goes, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Hard stop. Okay. So he created the heavens and the earth. Mm-hmm. And the earth was formless and void. And darkness was over the the face of the earth, and God hovered over the water.
Yeah.
So you have darkness, the perception of darkness. You have a void in formless earth, and you have water. And then he starts creation? Yeah. Well, when did he make a formless earth, and when was there water on it? Like, he just kind of generally says, in the beginning, sometime that we don't know, he created the heavens and the earth was now here, formless and empty. The earth was a past tense. If you look at the Hebrew, the word was hayatah. It's past tense feminine in the Hebrew, talking about it was. So it's there already. And then he shapes it. And then God said, and it's very relative to, like, I think a lot of people imagine God looking at the earth from outer space talking about this.
Right.
But day one, Erev and Boker, morning and night, or morning and evening, that means, so I ask people this question. If you're in outer space, is there Erev and Boker? Is there morning and evening in space from outer space? If you're on the International Space Station, or let's say you're out of the orbit of the earth and you're in between the earth and the moon, do you ever have a sunrise and a sunset? That you can have morning and evening?
Right.
No, you can't. You have to have the revolution of the earth.
Right.
So it sounds like God's maybe hovering over the face of the deep, but and we know from John that it was Jesus there at the beginning, and everything was made through him and by him and for him. And so we presume that perhaps Jesus is there,
on the earth,
being able to witness the morning and evening, the rotation. I mean, otherwise, how would you call it morning and evening? Because it's always sunny on one side of the earth at all times, and it's always dark on the other. But if the earth was static, but that's not the case. The earth is spinning on its axis, so half the earth gets daylight, half the earth gets dark, and then they trade as it revolves. And so,
see, in what core doctrine is he not affirming in this? That's why I don't get, there's nothing, because I have nothing against someone who disagrees with me, totally. There's guys who would say, well, you're wrong. I go, okay, I still love you, but I don't see, I listen to this, and I don't see how that takes away from God's glory. I don't see how it takes away from his majesty. I listen to that go, man, God has made some crazy stuff. That's amazing. Right. How big, it doesn't, like, it's one thing if someone says, well, Jesus was only man. Yeah, I have a problem with that. But this, I mean, can you, Sean, think of something that he's not affirming or he's denying
Absolutely
that's
not.
core to our faith?
Absolutely not.
It's not.
That's why I don't understand the defensiveness.
Well, it's not a hill I'm going to die on. If you want to be a young
I will
earther,
die on. No,
I'm not going to argue with you. If you want to be a theistic evolutionist, I'm not going to argue with you. If you want gap theory, I'm not going to argue with you because they're not pivotal issues. And I don't think we have enough evidence to make any concrete statements anyway. So you're just fighting about things with loosely. We have like kind of loose evidence to base this stuff on, relatively loose. Like things aren't always as they seem. Yeah. Like, especially when you're talking about the universe and the formation of the universe. We weren't there. It's deductive reasoning. It actually isn't the scientific method that we're using to, like, look at the origin of the universe. It's deductive reasoning.
Right,
because in order for it to be empiricism, you have to see it with your own eyes happening, and it has to be repeatable. Right. So, like, we haven't seen another Big Bang or another creation of the universe. So what do you have to compare it to? It's like, come on. And, like, I kind of get annoyed at, like, all of a sudden the birth of the multiverse. It's like, oh, good. C.S. Lewis addressed this. He's like, it's infinite regression. When your philosophy can't match up, you just resort to infinite regression. Right. So you don't ever have to be nailed down. Right. On a finite universe. They're like, oh, well, we're just one of infinite universes. It's like, oh, really? Have you observed even one other universe?
Right.
And the answer is no. And when you hear these specials on whatever Discovery Channel, it's like, yeah. It's a bunch of gum flapping that eventually leads to no. You don't have any empirical
language, Tony. Goodness. Flapping of the gum is children. I apologize.
Like in regards to like what you believe and how amazing it is. Like last time you were here, Tony, you talked about a lot of stuff, a lot of like remarkable statistics, and you were like, "This is like 1 to the 47th."
Yeah.
Which doesn't, to me, mean much. But, like, I saw this thing, and I think it applies here, and I'll tell you why in a second. It says, this is like a New York Times article, but it says, just to understand the scale of numbers, 1,000 seconds is 17 minutes. 1,000,000 seconds is about 12 days. 1,000,000,000 seconds is 31 years. Yep. So it's like the scale of those things becomes a lot more real.
It's exponential.
Yeah, and so when you're talking about 13.8 billion
Light years.
light years.
That a long time.
And that would be the radius, right? Not the diameter. Oh, gosh.
Spider.
Get it out of here. Ah! Oh, it just went behind me. Oh, he's been watching me for so long.
That spider totally dodged your shield.
Oh, I hate it.
I was.
Oh,
He's a freaking
wait.
ninja.
where is he?
That's a leg. Here, come on out.
Oh.
That was. Hold on.
Wait. See him? Stab him. I will burn this place down.
I'll do
burn
spiders.
it?
Got him.
Snakes, I got a problem.
Really?
Oh,
You're
yeah.
Indiana Jones?
I'm an Indiana Jones guy.
That was the best. I couldn't.
I mean, if I have a
plan that
shotgun, maybe
That was
not.
the
But
So
I thought you were just gonna punch it. You jump kicked it. I really thought you were just gonna turn.
that was a big spider.
Well,
I don't want to punch it.
I thought you were just gonna turn aside, punch it, and you. Audience at home, this was the most fantastic thing.
Oh,
Sean,
God.
that was like a flying teep twice. That spider.
Cursed, wretched. Oh,
That
I
was
hate
so
spiders.
amazing.
This is once again, why is nobody doing anything? Why is my government not doing anything about the spiders?
spider control.
Anyways, what were we talking? Oh yeah,
I
so
didn't mean to do that.
Magnitude.
I just was pointing.
Numbers.
the
Science. We said science.
the radius of the universe is 13.8
If we were at the center,
light years
then
wide.
maybe.
If we're at the center, so here's the crazy thing, where theology overlaps with science, I think, a little bit. In Isaiah, it talks about how the universe, the heavens, are measured by the span of God's hand. So you have like a universe that's let's say 27
That's the
million
furthest
miles
we
away.
can see out. It's the furthest of anything light traveling. So it may not be the edge of the universe. It's just the furthest.
It's just
thing
where
we
we can see,
God's
and
got
it's
a big
uniform.
hand.
So yeah, God's got a big hand, but like the crazy thing is,
I'm just
you're
looking.
freaking me out, man.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just checking for you. It's all.
I
He
hate
goes for the
spiders.
compound bow
Okay.
on the wall. He's like, "Ugh."
How was,
Seriously,
did
that's what
Ethan
I'm doing
break?
next time.
Did Ethan break?
I don't know. I heard some bottles.
Yeah. Is everyone okay on the podcast?
I was about to grab my chair, but I was like, how accurately can I hit this spider with the leg of the chair? I'm changing this. I just bug bombed this place
Well,
too.
no. When I slashed it with my knife, though, yeah, this is how bad it got. It fell out limp, so I think you did crush it on the second jump kick, and then I stomped on it, so I do believe it's dead.
Why are spiders?
What? No, that's all. That's a question.
That is
Why
my
are
question.
spiders? Why,
Tell
God?
You're a biologist. Answer the question.
Defend God, Tony.
I'm a micro guy though, so I'm not a. It's funny. People do that. They're like, "Hey, I got a biology question for you." Like,
I got this rash.
I'm not a zoologist. I'm not a doctor.
They're all
I'm not,
question.
like-
If you're a biochemist, why are cyborgs so sexy? You're like, what?
yeah. I think people they assume too much. Yeah.
Question: in a post or amillennial future, will there be spiders? Because I will change right now.
Spiders are the reason I waffle between the two, just because of that. Because it makes me struggle with my faith. They're just so soulless killing machines.
They are the absolute worst.
They,
Could you imagine if a spider was human size? We wouldn't exist anymore.
my friend, she posted a video in Peavine Field.
You'd
She
have
saw a
sweet
tarantula.
Human spider battles.
Have you? Did you pull your gun?
No.
I want to picture Tony out of his holster just firing 15 rounds,
No more.
hitting the neighbor's truck. Yeah.
Don't worry, we got it. They're like, oh, what was that? What was that?
It's not there. I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to freak you out.
No, it's all right. I'm glad you told me.
I just
That's the worst thing, is that it was
staring at you,
watching.
judging
Yeah,
you.
like the thing is it wasn't actively attacking me because I know that it was planning how to do it. And that's the worst thing. When the spider was there the whole time.
I like to punch them just because it's so personal, and I can say I killed them with my.
I
bare
feel like
hands.
that one could have taken a punch though.
Just
That was a big
All right,
spider. What kind of
listen.
spider was that even?
a Ralph Nader. I don't know.
It was brown.
Not every brown
furry.
spider is a criminal, Sean. Gosh, sorry, Tony.
All right. I am sorry.
I do
Tony.
have questions. All right, I have a few. Science. I have more science. science questions.
Real quick, I wanted to answer like magnitude. I think magnitude is the reason that a lot of scientists can deceive people that aren't in their field. Because they can go, oh yeah, no, that's no big deal. And you're like, what are you talking about? Nobody, like, because people don't understand the magnitude and the odds that you're just going, oh yeah, it's no big deal. Cosmologically speaking, it's no big deal. Right. You're like, the only reason people don't like go, wait, I'm going to call you on that is because they don't understand the order of magnitude that these numbers are. And they don't understand statistics and they don't understand like mathematics, and they know that. And they just put on this air of arrogance and say all these things, like, which is utter confidence. And you're like, you can't say that. Any statistician who's worth their salt that heard you say, well, it's absolute or it's 100% true. It's like, you can't say that. That's ridiculous.
That's why I hate carbon dating. Because like the
Does that plug, is that falling out? Do we need to push that in?
Maybe. I don't know.
Do you want me to
point
do
at
it?
Scares me now.
Do you want me to do it?
No, I'll do it. But it's like the older things get, the less accurate that number. And so they're usually taking a median. And so when they carbon date something that's 100 million years old.
Oh, they use carbon. Carbon dating's only good for about 5,000 years, maybe even less than that. But I think out to about 5,000 years.
Good.
I think people get confused with, so again, I'm no like geologist or anything, but I do understand the chemistry of half-lives and things like that. So it's like more like argon, potassium dating that they do for like things that are millions of years old. For things that are only a couple thousand years old, more like archaeology, do they use carbon dating?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Because I just remember hearing something, but it was from a Christian apologist, so I don't know how much of a bias there was there. But he said once you get into like tens of millions of years, like the accuracy is almost like half of the age or something like that. So if it's 10 million years old, the accuracy is plus or minus 5 million, which is ridiculous.
I wouldn't even go that route. That may be true, but I wouldn't even go that route. The fundamentals of radiometric dating, or using radioactive compounds, like certain compounds, they have more neutrons in them, which makes them
younger.
No, it makes them they decay. So they lose those neutrons over time, and that radiometric dating is measuring the ratio of how much a carbon or decay to another element.
Sorry, I'm
okay.
Kicking the spider. Continue. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So you have to know the amount that you started out with in order to realize how much you lost. Let me put it this way. Okay, so if you guys left and I had a bag of Skittles or whatever, or multiple bags of Skittles, or a freaking armory of Skittles, and I come in and I say, I've got 20 Skittles on the table. How much was there? But when you guys left for like a couple hours and you came back, how many were there when I started? And you're like, well, how many did you eat?
Yeah, right.
And I say, I'm not going to tell you. It's like, well, then you can't deduce how many were there to begin with. Same thing with radioisotopes, or like, it's just like, you don't know how many isotopes there were, or if the conditions on Earth were different that you could have had more isotopes. And like, Christians have trolled the radio labeling community. Like, some guys went to Mount St. Helens after it erupted and the lava rock had cooled, and they took a sample, sent it off for radiometric dating, potassium argon, and they're like, this is 5 billion years old. And they're like, no, it's not. It's from 1980 when Mount St. Helens blew. And they're like, well, you cheated. You went and got like new lava to like, and you're like, no, they didn't cheat. It was proof of concept that your radio labeling sucks. That that you have to know how much starting material you have. And a lot of the naturalists, they yield, or they are in line with the theory of uniformitarianism, that everything has been relatively constant. And it's just like, even they betray themselves because they go, oh, well, there's been these major extinction level events and catastrophes. And you're like, and you don't think that could reshape the surface of the Earth? Or like, come on. Like, I don't believe that the Earth has always been as we see it now. I clearly don't believe that. I mean, we look at ice core samples, and there's been way higher levels of carbon dioxide and oxygen in ages past. And they look at like iron-rich samples for higher oxygen concentrations in the past. No, the Earth has not remained constant. I think that's not relatively constant. And it's just like, there's some smoking guns that they don't want to deal with, I think. And like, it's like, okay, well,
They're sometimes the scientific community, they, instead of deducing things, they just deuce them. And I think it's ridiculous. Hold on real quick before we move on, Seth, because I know you have something to talk about, but I'm just curious this is totally your opinion. The universe 13.8 million years old, and then billion, and then there's a gap, and then, on the first day, the sun was, created.
Yeah, so I guess I'd say God fashioned our solar system. He found a place in the universe that he created, and he said, this will be good to put humans here.
Yeah. So from that point forward, how many days until man is created?
Yeah, I think it's a literal 6-day creation.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reason that I say that is because there's indicators like, and I believe that not even just because of the Bible, but because of external evidence. Like I said, the soft tissue in dinosaurs, all these what they call living fossils that said the coelacanth had died out, and then a fisherman caught it off the coast of South Africa, I believe. And they're like, oh, look, a living fossil. And you're like, okay, so it isn't 65 million years extinct. Right. It still is existing. And so you're whatever, and they're like, well, it's found pretty far in the like geological column, or it lives really far down off the coastal, like it was like whatever, 500 feet down. So if there's a catastrophic flood and a bunch of sediment kicked up, it's the first thing that's going to get buried because of where its habitat is. Not because it's older than other organisms. Was it found that low in the geological record in the sediment? And so, and then like, oh man, the naturalists try to fight tooth and nail a catastrophic worldwide flood. It's like, but how do you have like close to 300 cultures with a flood narrative that their region was flooded completely, and you have this scattered over all of the earth coming from all these indigenous cultures? Come on. Or like I said, aquatic fossils are the dominant fossils found on land. On like,
didn't you say, I think someone said even almost close to mountain ranges, weren't they?
Oh, totally. There's clams on the top of Mount Everest. Now, I don't think Mount Everest was Mount Everest when they got there.
Well, yeah.
But I think the tectonic plates pushed them up. Yeah, I think uniformitarianism is a good guess, but I think it's wrong. I believe more of a catastrophic reshaping of the surface of the earth, and whatever. People can disagree with me. Like I said, I'm no geologist, but there's again, like dinosaurs, the biology, the proteins in the dinosaurs. I can look at that and make inferences based on that. And so, yeah, there's a lot of things that the scientific community doesn't really want to address and wants to kind of push to the side and sweep to the side, and they don't want to answer, or they come up with lame excuses. And I think the common person doesn't really pick up on them, but somebody who understands what they're looking at is like, you guys are lying to the masses by your cop-out excuses for soft tissue in dinosaurs or whatever.
One more clarification before Seth gets to say anything. Do you think 6 literal days, or I guess 7 literal days, or maybe the first day wasn't? But do you think those days were the 24 hours that we know a day to be now?
Yeah, I mean, Erev and Boker, evening and morning, each day denotes that. And there was evening and there was morning the first day. There was evening and morning the second day. There was evening and morning the third day. I just don't know. And Yom, like, yeah, sure. People try to like kind of reach out and go, well, a day is like 1,000 years in the eye of the Lord. Yeah, but it isn't to us. And like, the perspective is being told to human beings. It's not God. It sounds like it's not God just like talking to himself. I mean, somebody had to tell somebody. I think the Jews believe that God told Adam this, and Adam passed it down through oral tradition, and Moses eventually wrote it down. It kind of looks like that. Chapters 1 through 3 of Genesis sound like the narration of somebody who was probably closer to Adam and not. Yeah, so I think it was oral tradition that was passed down to Moses, and Moses just happened to write it down. Yeah. But yeah. And then, again, the plethora of flood stories and stuff like that. I mean, I guess.
Even Gilgamesh has a story about a flood, I think.
Totally. Yeah.
And it kept recording, right? I didn't knock out the cord when I did that?
Yeah, I think it's all good. It looks like it's working.
All right, it was hanging out, so I was trying to,
I appreciate you telling me like a good friend.
That there was a spider.
Some friends wouldn't tell me and would let it look at me that whole time.
You want to talk about? Is this a bad time?
Sensitive topic.
All right, so because I want to go something else, but to I will say I agree with you on the infinite regression, because they even have said in articles there's always that pesky question of what started that.
Right.
What initiated that. And here's the thing, the only logical thing I've seen, or that I found, and this gets more into philosophical or all that, but the only way you can never have a beginning is if you have something that needs no beginning, is something that needs no catalyst. Because if there's always a catalyst needed, you're always going to say, what's the next catalyst? But if there's something that needs no catalyst, that is self-existing, self-evident, always has been God, it needs no catalyst. It simply begins the process. It's the creation or origin of all catalysts. Right. And I don't even think that's just theological. I think that's a logical conclusion of, if you tell me, well, multiverse, I'll go, cool. What made that? Well, this. All right. What started that? Oh, this. Well, what brought that about? Why does it do that? There's always going to be. And that's my biggest issue with some of these guys. And actually why I believe in a creator, because I go, you need something that needs no catalyst to start everything else off.
Right. And even when I wasn't a Christian in high school, I was still a deist. There was no way that I could abandon God. Just like with my own, like I just looked around, I was like, this world is too uniform, I think we take for granted how uniform the laws that govern this universe are. The things, I was just like, there's no way. And I think people need to trust that intuition, even though they don't know the science, I think people need to trust their instinct, their intuition, that there's no way. Like, I don't know the exact number of the probability that it would take to randomly assemble this universe and it be habitable for life forms to inhabit it. But there's something to that. There's something in the back of their mind telling them, no way, no way. And you should listen to that. Don't let somebody philosophize you out of like almost this common sense that you have. And I had that. And then it just affirmed it the more that I delved into the sciences. I was just like, there's no way. I mean, it's not like there is just, the number is so astronomically impossible if we start going over like, and you see this, like I saw Lawrence Krauss debating Dinesh D'Souza and a Christian physicist. And Lawrence Krauss comes out the gate going, well, the fine-tuning argument sucks and blah, blah, blah. They're going to try to come at you with this and just don't even pay any credence to it, essentially. And you're like, you jerk.
Yeah. Because
you know it's something you don't want to have to contend with. Because you know that the fine-tuning numbers, the odds of it randomly assembling itself is so astronomically high that you don't want to have to defend that. So your strategy was to come out the gates and denounce it before they even had a chance to say anything. And it's like, that's good strategizing, but that's bad science. So shame on you, Lawrence, if you're listening to this, and I know you are.
He does.
I know you're listening.
He shared my thing on Facebook called Ducks. Yeah.
He blocked me.
He blocked you. So, side note, because I want to give Tony time for this. So, we talk about Tales from the Ditch. Basically anything growing up that you think is silly, full of shenanigans. So I want Sean to tell one and Tony to tell one. Just something ridiculous. Growing up, doesn't have to be ditch related, but I want to give you guys a few minutes to think of your tale from the ditch. So think about that. In the meantime, in order to stall, I'm going to bring up that, Ryan Smith, me and a friend Rob of ours, were talking about, this idea of how we could try sneak, lyrics from sitcom theme songs into sermons. And just see how many you could get away with before people realize you're taking stuff from TV and putting it in a sermon. Like you're just preaching.
You want to come to a church where everybody
knows your name. Yeah. We all want to be known and known. Like the prodigal, the father looks at the prodigal son and says, show me that smile again.
It just kind of felt like in my soul, like, like, was that the Seinfeld?
Whatever happened to this day and age?
I know.
When you can't find any good thing on the newspaper page.
And Jesus is talking, and John says, everywhere you look, there's a heart of somebody who needs you.
Oh, man.
And they wept.
Oh,
they just wept. So in the audience is all, Salah.
Salah.
So it's like, that really reached to Pastor Seth. I'm like, okay.
Sometimes I wish Charles was in charge of me. Actually, that would be hard to say.
I want God to bring me to a point where I'm standing on the wings of my dreams. You know what? I echo what you're saying, Sean. Good. That's just good theology. I believe it was in Doesn't Exist to Kiss 8:12.
You wake up and you're like, nobody told me life was going to be this way.
Yeah. Yeah. You just,
Oh, that's good.
If that was a horse, we beat the hell out of it.
Yeah. I
A dead horse, not a live one. That'd be animal cruelty. I'm
That'd
sorry.
just be
Rude.
PETA lovers.
PETA. Not that. Never mind.
We don't beat live horses here.
We don't beat unless they have on standard 10-ounce gloves.
Right.
And then, well, that's regulated by the Athletic Commission, so that's really on them. But, Sean, do you have a tale from the ditch?
Yeah.
I stalled as long as I could, unless
I've
you
got
want
one.
to kick some spiders or punch
I've
the
got
wall.
one about spiders.
Is it
It's actually
now?
not about spiders. It's
Okay.
about some other invasive insect. And this one time, I was like laying on the couch. This is going to be a disappointing tale from the ditch.
No.
But this one time I was laying on the couch watching TV, and subconsciously I was just like kind of like scratching my wrist, and there was like a bump there, and so I'm like thinking like I'm not thinking. That's the thing. I'm watching a show, but I'm scratching my wrist, and eventually I look down and I realize it's this little bug, this little kind of furry, kind of a spider, but more of like a centipede type of thing. And it was just sitting on my wrist getting pet by me while I was scratching it. And it was just sitting there the whole time looking at me and enjoying the stimulation and didn't do anything about it. And when I finally looked down and realized my wife was with me, when I finally looked down and realized what it was, I like unloaded, just like with this spider, just this angry fury, and like was unsatisfied until the house was like, I couldn't sleep for days and all kinds of stuff. Not because there was a bug and it was mean, but because it was just watching me. and it was just there the whole time, knowing how much that bothers me, and it did it, and it was super crazy. But anyways, like I broke a window. I mean, I did all kinds of damage to the house just from like freaking out and like doing that shivery thing and trying to get it off me, and like knocked over a stereo, ruined the TV, all kinds of stuff. Like the whole household was destroyed.
So you didn't overreact. That's what I mean.
And it's just the worst part. And still to this day, I shudder thinking about it, how long it was sitting there getting pet by me.
Stimulate
And
aroused.
not do. And it was, what was it doing? And it was alive. Like I had to kill it still. It was literally just sitting there. And I had been, I don't even know how long, maybe 20 minutes. I had been kind of like subconsciously scratching it, thinking it was like a scab or a freckle or something like that. It was this bug. And, you can ask my wife. It was really, that's when she realized I had an uncontrollable temper, and she would not ever cross me after that because she was afraid of what would happen, which is bad. It was like, I was like the dad in Radio Flyer.
Oh, no.
No.
It was like,
That's
I was just
way-
angry to the bug, not to my wife.
He
I could drink a 6-pack of Bud before that.
Just
punched my son for
be
not fishing
angry
right.
at that
Yeah.
bug for no reason.
Gosh. Well, that was depressing. Tony, anything for you growing up
it's-
that's funny and
I
not
guess-
super depressing?
So, yeah. I
Sean,
don't think I've
All
told,
I can think about because
told any mass amount of people, of any sizable group of people this. But, okay, so I was in my undergraduate in college, and like you just don't get sleep depending on your program. If you're like a business major, sure, you sleep like a baby. But as a biochem major, I didn't get like any sleep. So this is the reason why I don't wear boxers without a button in the front at all. You know where this is going. So I'm literally early morning. I'm up for an early class that I obviously don't want to be at. There's very few people on campus. Thank God. I'm walking near Schulich Lecture Hall, and I'm just like kind of dragging because it's just like I'm not even fully awake, not even close, didn't get any caffeine in me. And I'm walking near Schulich Lecture Hall towards the Ansari Business Building, and I'm like, man, it's kind of cold out here, and it's kind of cold near my dongle. So apparently I'd left my fly open, and I had boxers
Oh gosh.
without a button. So my thing is hanging out, and I'm walking, and I'm like, ah!
Once you realize it,
Yeah, quickly pull
a
it
little
back in.
fruit coming out of the loom.
Yeah. And I was like, that's it. I'm never wearing boxers without a button or boxer briefs again.
It is true. How did we make it to like 2018 with boxers? It just seems like if you believe in evolution, we shouldn't have boxers anymore.
But no one saw, that was good.
Well,
But,
that you know of.
Yeah.
There was a cat, and he was judging you.
Yeah.
There was a cat that just watched. He's like, you filthy pervert.
That's so terrible. It's a little cold out here.
A little.
Wait, it's not what you think.
What?
Oh,
Why is that man trying to smuggle sausage into college class today? What's he doing? Oh
man, you couldn't get away with that now.
No, well, it was on accident. How do you convince somebody that was on accident?
Look, sir.
There's watchdogs looking for that at the college now.
We both know I wouldn't knowingly let my dangle fly free in public.
It's only for a second. But
that you know of.
yeah.
That's a long walk, though.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to picture
Were you
the
driving
parking
like
area.
that every turn?
No, probably my fly was down. It didn't breach quite yet until I got into the stride.
That's true. Yeah, I understand.
We need to talk about the
locomotion.
magnitude of this. How many seconds that was out in the universe?
Oh man,
It's a miracle when you really think of the possibility of
keeping it in.
I don't know. I just am
It
so
is, truly.
pleased with this.
Think of this statistic.
I am pleased as punch. Oh, you guys have done better than I could have ever expected for this podcast. Sean, tip of the hat to you for making me think you were going to punch through the wall. It's just
Anytime.
Oh, gosh.
To be clear, too.
Do you remember when our friends paid me money to hold that Black Widow?
I do remember that. Yeah.
And I did it because I needed
It's like
money.
$11, I think.
11 whole dollars. That was a whole Denny's meal back then.
That's right.
Hey kids, see if you make wise investments. Before we close, I want to talk about, we have the 50 episode anniversary, which is what
Don't
day?
you have a tail from the ditch?
No.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
I didn't plan that out. Hey, I stalled for 3 minutes talking about Growing Pains theme songs. But I thank you for including me though. I echo that affirmation.
Sometimes you just got to take things step by step,
Step by step,
day by day.
day by day.
I can't remember that.
So, what date is that, Sean? The 50-year episode?
We'll be recording the
50-year episode. 50th episode.
50th
Dang, we've
episode.
been doing this a while.
We're going to be recording the 50th episode, I believe, on the 24th, which is a Saturday. It'll be the first time we've ever not recorded a podcast on Tuesday.
Which you're invited, Tony, of
Very
course.
cool.
So.
Yeah, you're going to be there, right?
On Saturday? What Saturday?
Not according to Facebook. According to Facebook, you haven't answered yet.
He doesn't get on
Yeah,
there.
I don't have a
That's
Facebook.
why his blood pressure isn't terrible.
Yeah, it's Saturday after
24th.
Thanksgiving, and we'll try to publish it. We might even do a live thing. I don't know.
I thought we were going to.
Yeah, I
I want
think
to do
we
something
can.
crazy.
Yeah.
Talk about the devil's lettuce,
Yeah. It'll be fun.
as the young kids call it. YOLO. Right? 50th episode. So yeah, if you have any complaints, take it up with Sean, because I'm only here by contract. I think we've established that. talesfromtheditch@gmail.com, to argue with us, tell us why we're terrible, just the worst.
I would say send an email if you have any questions or need any clarifications, and we will get it to Tony, and he can answer in his sciencey
Yeah,
way.
especially on, we have to do this with Tyler Mack too. When it's a episode where it's not just goofing around like a lot of serious stuff, clarification is welcome. I think, Tony, are you okay to answer questions?
Yeah,
if we
of
say
course.
it?
Of course.
He will respond the same way he does to everyone of how dare you make eye contact with me. Who do you think you are? Where do you get off? What if someone answered you, said, where do you get off? And they told you.
Yeah, J Street.
Where do you go from there? I mean, you're like, well, okay,
Fine then.
good. I'm still just so happy how this went. All right, you want to close this out, Sean?
Yeah, Tony.
Yes.
Zip it up.
Yeah!
All right.
Yes, you knew it.
This spiked so bad.